Hello and welcome to Strange Pathways. I'm your host, Scott Mort. I'm having a good week. I hope you're having a really good week too. The injuries just keep coming. I dealt with a vicious migraine yesterday. Thankfully, after a few hours, I was able to fight it off. Those of you, though, who suffer from migraines will know its effects are long-lasting. It's feeling a little miserable today. Tight muscles in my back. It just feels like there's something creeping up on me, like a headache. It's rough. It is rough. If you suffer from migraines, my heart goes out to you. It's rough. They're not headaches. They're not headaches. It's like calling a heart attack being a little winded. It's kind of rough. Want to say a huge thank you out to my buddy Jerome. Jerome and his wife Christy, we got to hang out with them last night. Really made my week. But enough about my life. On to this week's tales. Our first tale takes us back to February 23rd, 1975. Kofu City, Yamanashi, Japan. Just a little bit before 7 p.m., Masato Kawana and Katsuhira Yamahata are roller skating near the Hinode housing estate. Now these are two grade school boys. They're just out there. They're 7, 8 years old. They're out there having a good time. That's whenever they notice not one, but two glittering orange UFOs just kind of bouncing in the sky above them. They're absolutely stunned. They're staring at them. The larger of the two objects breaks away and begins to fly near a mountain close to them, Mount Otago. Then the smaller one slowly lowers itself to the ground. And it lands in these crops. There's a vineyard behind the property. And there's these crops there. These objects, they're not silent either. They're giving off this crackling, ticking sound. The boys kind of likened it to a Geiger counter. Now, whenever you're 17 years old, maybe you have more bravery than common sense. Maybe these two boys were just brave to begin with. But these two boys, they took their skates off and they ran into the vineyard. They want to take a really close look at this craft. Now, these two second graders, they approach the craft. It's no longer orange. Now it's silver. It's got this dome on it. It's about 7 feet high, around 15 feet around. It's a flying saucer. It's perched on 3 ball-shaped legs. And, reminiscent of the Kecksburg encounter, this thing has strange lettering on the metal surface of the hull. These boys get really close. They're inspecting this. And they take a couple of good close looks at it. And that's whenever Kawano and Yamahata get really scared. Because a hatch opens on the side of this craft. And a ladder starts to extend down to the ground below automatically. And then the alien comes out. They're seeing this very human-looking creature start to climb down the ladder. And there's a smaller one that's remaining inside the ship. This creature is very long-armed. It's about 4 foot tall. And it's dressed in this silver uniform that kind of gives off this glow. Now, this uniform doesn't cover it head to toe. There is skin that you can see, and it's this dark brown skin. The wrinkles on the skin are so dense, it's kind of like a raisin. They can't really see any features except for these 3 2-inch long metal fangs. It's kind of frightening. Just imagine something that's dark brown is so wrinkled that you can't make out anything except for 3 fangs. H.R. Giger once said the secret to making his xenomorph so frightening was that the xenomorph from Ridley Scott's Alien movies is that there's no eyes. Right? There's no real features, so you can't kind of judge what's going on. This alien begins to explore the land around them. It doesn't even really notice the 2 boys. But then it turns around quickly and places what we would call a hand on Yamamoto's shoulder. And it gives him a quick pat. And then it starts to speak. But it's not making any sense. The boys said it sounded like a tape recorder running backwards. Now, whether it was fear, whether it was something the alien did, Yamamoto collapses. He's absolutely paralyzed. Continuing to be as brave as they ever were, Kawano pulls Yamamoto up onto his shoulders and begins to lug him away from the craft and these aliens. They get back home. They're hysterical, and they start to tell their mothers. Now, their mothers, they follow their sons back to the Hinode housing estate. And that's whenever the mothers see the orange light pulsating in the vineyard. And they continue to see it for a full 5 minutes. The boys are saying, come see it. Come see it. The mothers are terrified. Before Yamamoto and Kawana can convince their parents to go closer, this craft launched. And the launch caused a burst of light so bright that the eyewitnesses, they had to look away. It hurt their eyes. Now, even though these 2 boys were the only one to see the aliens, there was a classmate of theirs, an 8-year-old named Ichiro Minagashi. He saw the flying object while he was riding in a car with his parents. This is what happened about 30 minutes before the boys saw the aliens. These boys told their class, they drew pictures, and they became minor celebrities. These boys actually convinced their school officials to go out and inspect the area. A couple of the teachers, some staff, they go out and they notice that these 2 solid concrete posts had been pushed over at the landing site. And it was, these are 2 7-year-old kids. The teachers go, they couldn't have done this. There was a ring pattern in the soil near the broken concrete posts. One of the school teachers even said that it was radioactive within that circular patch. These boys were questioned by their parents, their schoolmaster, a noted UFO investigator in Japan, Masaru Mori. They never wavered from their story. Now, the Civil Aviation Bureau of the Transportation of Ministry, they said this UFO, it was nothing. These kids imagined it. It was a YS-11 propeller plane. Now, I don't know about you, but I think what these two boys saw, and their parents, and their friend, a little bit more than a propeller plane. Our next tale takes us back to Ann Arbor, Michigan, June of 1975. Robert Antoszczyk, and I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that name correctly, but that's the pronunciation we're going to go with. He was 29 years old. He was a yoga teacher, a beekeeper, vegetarian before vegetarian was popular. He was peaceful, he was loving, but he was a weightlifter, he was a martial artist, he was part of the physics club and the rocket tech club. This was an intelligent man who had some peaceful ways. Didn't drink, didn't do drugs. He taught yoga at the YMCA for about 2 years. But Robert was really fascinated, not so much with the health benefits, but the spiritual side of yoga. One of the things that was becoming more and more the rage in the 1970s was the thought of astral projection, untethering your soul from your body and exploring not just the world around you, but worlds adjacent to you. The next realm, the ethereal realm. Going backwards, forwards, and sideways in time. Robert Antoszczyk, of course he's not going to be satisfied just reading about this. He wants to do it for himself. I'm not going to lie to you. I've tried. I've only ever had one out-of-body experience in my life. And I can't even chalk that up to anything paranormal. It very well could have been just a psychological trick my body played on itself, my mind played on itself, to get through a tough time. Real quickly, my mother had a horrible infection. I was the only one dressing her wound, and it was bad. It was really, really bad. Not the worst she would ever have, but it was bad. It was the worst that she had had up to that point. And as I'm dressing this wound, as I have to do twice a day, the first time I did it, I found myself not staring at it, but staring at me doing it. It was like my body was on autopilot and I was watching me do the procedure. I've never been able to replicate it. And like I said, I can't even chalk it up to it actually happened. I chalk it up to it was my mind protecting itself. But Robert Antoszczyk, no, he's an explorer. He wants to experience it. He doesn't go on the internet. Of course, there's no internet back in the 1970s. He doesn't go and find somebody in the States. Robert Antoszczyk actually goes to India to find a master yogi. Straight to the source. In India, he starts to get used to it. And his teachers go, Robert, don't go too far with this. This could be very, very dangerous. Don't go too far. Robert began to have dreams about this beautiful, this foreign-looking woman with just a voice that called to him. And she was calling to Robert from beyond the cosmos. Now, Robert, for as healthy, for as peaceful as he was, he didn't really have a lot of luck with the ladies. And the idea of a possible relationship, it really appealed to him. And Robert becomes determined. He's going to find this exotic woman who has been giving him a siren call in his dreams. That takes us to June 1975. Robert goes to his roommate Neil and says, "I need to be alone. Don't disturb me." Robert locks himself in his room, and he begins to go through the practices that those yogis taught him in India. He is going to find this woman. Robert lays down on his back. He forms his hand into fists, and he meditates. He is focused, he is calm, he is peaceful. He's got a mission, and he's going to see it through. On the other side of that door, Neil's getting worried. One day has passed. Neil's getting worried. 2 days have passed. Neil's concerned. 3 days have passed. Survivalists talk about the rule of 3. 3 weeks without food. 3 days without water. 3 minutes without air. 3 seconds without hope. Robert is breaking one of those rules of 3. He has been 3 days without water. No noise has come from the room. Neil can't take it anymore. He breaks down the door. Robert's dead, lying on his back with his thumbs between his index and middle fingers. He's empty. He's an empty body. The soul has vacated, and there's nothing but a smile. The police come. They're completely confused. Robert's been in great health. He's exercised. He's taken care of. Doesn't drink, doesn't smoke, doesn't do drugs. There's no obvious cause of death. Did he die because of the astral projection? Now, eventually, the official explanation for Robert Antoszczyk's death was cocaine overdose. None of his friends or his family believed that. So, what are our options here? I mean, option number 1, Robert had a heart attack. He went in there, had a very quiet heart attack, but you would think there would be signs of a heart attack where his body would be on the floor and clutching his chest. You wouldn't think that the amazing pain of a heart attack, he'd be able to ignore it or not feel it. He was in good health, right? Maybe it was a cocaine overdose. Maybe he thought cocaine would help with the astral projection. Maybe he found the love, not just of his life, but the love of his existence. That woman that was coming to him in his dreams. He found her and got to go with her. My heart, that's what I want to think happened. But then in the back of my mind, I become more and more worried that what really happened was, well, the old tales of the siren. That call that men cannot, will not ignore. And it's a lure. It's the worm on the end of a hook. Did something imitate something Robert could not ignore? Use that as bait. And then take his soul for its own. One of the websites that I go to every single day, and I'm sure my regular listeners are so sick of hearing this, I love phantomsandmonsters.com. It is an absolute wealth of information, and Lon Strickler has done an amazing job of just cataloging all sorts of strangeness. Now, in July 2011, he gets a report. Lon Strickler. Hello, Ingrid. My cat, Ingrid. Greta. Ingrid was a cat I had a long time ago, but Greta. My cat, Greta Garbo. She just climbed up on my shoulder. It's just perched there and decided she wanted to meow into the mic. My apologies. Yes, Greta. Anyway, my apologies. Lon Strickler received a report July 2011. This gentleman was fishing on the Musconetcong River near Hackettstown, New Jersey. He was fly fishing there with his boss. The water was clear, but there had been really, really heavy rains in the past couple of days. The river's smooth, the current is strong, and really it's not good fishing weather with a strong current, but they're really just out there to relax. Now this witness was leaning backwards, he was digging his heels into the gravel, and he's out there. It's a little rough. He's had other encounters before with like shadow people, ghosts, but he said what he is going to see is not spirit. It was biological. It's a living creature, solid. But it does display some odd behavior. As he's waist deep in the water and it's kicking him along, he sees something move out of the corner of his eye. It's off to his left, and there it was. 6 foot tall at least, but probably more like 6'6", 7 foot. It's moving away from him and up the bank. Now remember, he's chest high in this river doing fly fishing. The first thing that grabs the witness's attention is this grasshopper-like thigh, but it's bending forward like a human's. He starts to focus in on the whole creature. This creature is looking at him over its shoulder. It's moving up the bank, and the creature is astonished that the witness is seeing it. It's not clear that that this thing is either astonished that it can see it, or maybe what's this monkey doing in the strong current, but they do lock eyes. Maybe it's all three. This thing has a triangular head, huge, slanted black eyes, just like a praying mantis. The whole body is gangly. It's not a big bug. It's a powerful humanoid that has insect-like qualities. His boss is about 50 yards behind him. And he decides, I'm not going to say anything. And being that he's had other encounters, he just lets it go. Now, Lon Strickler, he wants to know more, so he writes back and said, please tell me more. The witness tells him that this took place in Hackettstown, New Jersey. There's a stretch of the Musconetcong River. Its west bank borders Route 46. There's no bank there to speak of, at least on the developed side, but the sloping side was about 10 foot high, and a strip of trees about 10 to 20 yards thick separated the river from the fields. The weather had been bad. The sky was white and heavy, mid-afternoon. The Mantis man was actually closer to him than his boss was. Where his boss was about 50 yards away, this Mantis was about 15 to 20 yards away. It was several feet above him. Remember, it's going up that bank. And it was framed clearly against that blank white sky. But here's where it gets interesting. This Mantis man, it didn't run into the woods. It evaporated mid-stride. The witness got the idea that it cloaked itself, much like a mimic octopus or a chameleon can do. He doesn't believe that it slipped into an alternate dimension. Lon does a little bit of research. And a few days later, he comes across an article on the Hackettstown Life Online forum about someone else who saw the Mantis man on the same river. This gentleman posts that a year ago, his friend and his brother were down at Stevens State Park. It was around dusk, and they were fishing. Now, his brother's about 50 yards downstream fishing, and he feels this strange vibration in his right ear. He turns and looks to the right, and sees a 6 to 7 foot tall praying mantis looking man. Once again, he's getting the feeling that this creature is astounded that he can be seen. This creature is black and gray. And he said his friend was having a tough time telling the story. He's kind of tearing up a little bit. They Google praying mantis man on the Musconetcong, and they come across Lon's story. There is something out there. I have no doubt of that. There is some insect-like being that is so good at camouflage that we don't even know it exists. It's happened before. One of the creatures I mentioned, the mimic octopus. It was only discovered recently because of how good it is at making itself look like other creatures. So if we only recently discovered that, what if something was so good at camouflage we never even noticed it? It's really frightening to think of that we share this world with other creatures that we don't even know exist. But I'm absolutely 100% convinced that we do. How would we go about even making contact with something we don't know is there? Maybe this one is sick. Maybe it's elderly. Maybe it's got some sort of genetic condition that makes it unable to camouflage as well as its brethren. How do they feel about us? What are their attitudes towards humans? Are we just another species that they exist with? Are they more advanced than us? Are we more advanced than them? Or are we their property? Thank you so much for joining us again this week on Strange Pathways. Head over to Twitter, Pathways Strange, our TikTok and Instagram, Strange Pathways Podcast. Head on over to our Facebook. We're going to have some artwork, some images based on the tales that you heard here this week. They'll also be up on our Instagram and our Twitter. If you would like to email me, you can do so at strangepathwaysmail@gmail.com. Once again, please click like, comment, subscribe on our YouTube channel. Tell your friends, tell your family. Like I said, you know you've got that one member of your family that would absolutely love this show. Once again, thank you so much for joining me here this week. Take care of yourselves and each other.